The morning mist clung to the mountains of Afghanistan like a gray blanket, and Staff Sergeant Maria Santos adjusted her scope one final time. She had been lying motionless in the same position for 14 hours, watching a Taliban compound through her rifle's crosshairs. Her back ached, her legs had gone numb hours ago, and the rocky ground had left permanent impressions on her body, but she didn't move a muscle. Maria was different from the other soldiers in her unit. While they wore the same desert camouflage and carried similar weapons, she carried something extra: the weight of proving herself in a world that still questioned whether women belonged in combat roles. At 5 feet 4 inches tall and weighing just 120 pounds, she looked more like someone's younger sister than a trained killer. Growing up in a small Texas town, Maria had learned to shoot before she could properly ride a bicycle. Her father, a Vietnam veteran, had taken her hunting every weekend from the time she was 8 years old. While other girls her age were playing with dolls, Maria was learning to calculate wind speed and bullet drop. Her father never treated her differently because she was a girl. To him, she was just another shooter who needed to learn respect for the weapon and the skill to use it properly. "You either hit your target or you don't," he used to tell her. "The bullet doesn't care if you're a man or a woman." But the military was different. When Maria first enlisted, her drill sergeants made it clear that they thought she was wasting everyone's time. They pushed her harder than the male recruits, gave her extra duties, and waited for her to quit. Instead, she excelled. Every test, every challenge, every impossible standard they set for her, she met and exceeded it. During basic training, while other recruits complained about the early morning runs, Maria was already awake, practicing her marksmanship in the pre-dawn darkness. The shooting range became her sanctuary. There, with a rifle in her hands and targets downrange, all the doubts and whispers faded away. There was only her, the weapon, and the target. Her talent with a rifle was undeniable. She could put 5 rounds through the same hole at 300 yards, and she did it consistently, regardless of weather conditions or pressure. Her instructors noticed, but they were reluctant to recommend her for sniper school. Female soldiers weren't officially allowed in combat roles yet, and sniper training was considered one of the most elite combat positions in the military. But Maria's scores were too impressive to ignore. She outshot male soldiers who had been training for years. During one memorable qualification, she scored a perfect 40 out of 40 on the marksmanship test, something that only 3 other soldiers had accomplished in the past 5 years. When the opportunity finally came to attend sniper school, Maria jumped at it. The training was brutal, designed to break even the strongest soldiers. For 3 months, she crawled through swamps, endured sleep deprivation, and learned to become invisible in any environment. She studied ballistics until she could calculate trajectories in her sleep and practiced holding her breath until she could remain perfectly still for minutes at a time. The other students in her class were all male, all experienced infantry soldiers, and all skeptical about training alongside a woman. Some were openly hostile, making crude jokes and questioning whether she had earned her place through merit or political correctness. Maria ignored them and focused on her training. During one exercise, she was paired with a soldier named Jake Morrison for a stalking mission. They had to move unseen across open ground and establish a firing position within 200 yards of their instructors without being detected. Jake made it clear he thought she would compromise their mission. "Just stay behind me and try not to get us both kicked out," he whispered as they began their approach. Maria said nothing. She had learned that actions spoke louder than words. For the next 6 hours, she moved like a ghost across the terrain. While Jake struggled with his camouflage and made small noises that could have given away their position, Maria seemed to become part of the landscape itself. When they finally reached their target area, the instructor spent an hour searching for them with binoculars and couldn't locate their position. Maria's camouflage and positioning were perfect. Even Jake, lying just 3 feet away from her, had to look twice to confirm she was still there. "I can't see you, and I know exactly where you are," he whispered in amazement. That exercise changed how her classmates viewed her. Word spread quickly through the school about the small woman who could disappear completely and shoot with impossible accuracy. But respect from fellow students was one thing. Acceptance from the broader military was another challenge entirely. After graduating from sniper school with the highest overall scores in her class, Maria faced her biggest obstacle yet. Despite her qualifications, military policy still officially prohibited women from serving in direct combat roles. She was assigned to a support unit, where her advanced training seemed wasted on routine security duties. For 2 years, she watched as male snipers with lower scores and less training were deployed to combat zones while she remained stateside. The frustration was crushing. She had worked harder than anyone, sacrificed more than most, and proven herself repeatedly, yet she was still seen as unsuitable for the very job she had trained for. Everything changed in 2011 when military policies began to shift. Female soldiers were being attached to combat units in Afghanistan and Iraq, officially in support roles, but often finding themselves in firefights alongside their male counterparts. Maria's opportunity finally came when her unit was deployed to Afghanistan as part of a special task force hunting high-value Taliban targets. The mission was supposed to be routine intelligence gathering, but in Afghanistan, nothing was ever routine. Maria's unit was attached to a larger force conducting raids in the mountainous regions along the Pakistani border, areas where Taliban fighters moved freely and American forces were constantly under threat. On her first deployment, Maria quickly proved that her skills translated perfectly to real combat situations. During a raid on a suspected bomb-making facility, her unit came under heavy fire from fighters positioned on a ridgeline 400 yards away. While other soldiers took cover and called for air support, Maria calmly set up her rifle and began engaging targets with surgical precision. Her first shot silenced a machine gun position that had been pinning down an entire squad of Marines. Her second shot eliminated a sniper who had been targeting American medics trying to reach wounded soldiers. In less than 5 minutes, she had neutralized 4 enemy fighters and turned the tide of the engagement. After the battle, a Marine gunnery sergeant approached her position. He had been in combat for over a decade and had never seen shooting like that under pressure. "Where the hell did you learn to shoot like that?" he asked. "Texas," Maria replied simply. Word of her performance spread quickly through the forward operating base. Commanders who had been skeptical about having a female sniper attached to their units began requesting her specifically for dangerous missions. They discovered what Maria had always known. Her gender was irrelevant when bullets were flying and lives were at stake. But even as her reputation grew among frontline soldiers, the military bureaucracy struggled to acknowledge her contributions officially. She couldn't receive certain commendations because they were restricted to personnel in combat roles, which she technically wasn't supposed to be in. Her after-action reports were often classified or minimized to avoid highlighting the contradiction in military policy. Maria didn't care about the politics. She cared about the soldiers she was protecting and the missions she was accomplishing. Every day in Afghanistan brought new challenges and new opportunities to prove that she belonged exactly where she was. The mission that would define Maria's career began with faulty intelligence and nearly ended in disaster. Her unit received orders to provide overwatch for a special forces team conducting a night raid on a compound believed to house a Taliban bomb maker. The intelligence indicated minimal resistance and a quick in-and-out operation. Maria positioned herself on a hilltop, 600 yards from the target compound, her night vision scope revealing every detail of the moonlit valley below. Through her earpiece, she could hear the assault team moving into position, their whispered communications calm and professional. Everything seemed routine until the first explosion shattered the night. The compound erupted in automatic weapons fire and rocket-propelled grenades. The intelligence had been completely wrong. Instead of finding a lone bomb maker, the assault team had stumbled into a major Taliban meeting with over 30 heavily armed fighters. The Special Forces team found themselves trapped inside the compound's courtyard, taking heavy fire from multiple directions. "Overwatch, this is ground team," the team leader's voice crackled through Maria's radio, barely audible over the gunfire. "We need immediate fire support. Enemy positions on the north wall, east building, and rooftop positions." Maria's training took over. She identified the first target, a fighter with an RPG launcher on the compound's roof, preparing to fire at the trapped Americans below. Her crosshairs settled on the man's center mass, and she controlled her breathing, waiting for the natural pause between heartbeats. The rifle's recoil was familiar and comforting. 600 yards away, the RPG gunner dropped instantly. She immediately shifted to the next target, a machine gun position on the north wall that was raking the courtyard with deadly fire. Two more shots, two more enemy fighters eliminated. But there were too many targets and too many angles of attack. The assault team was still pinned down, and Maria could hear the panic creeping into their radio transmissions. They had wounded soldiers who needed immediate medical evacuation, but the landing zone was too hot for helicopter extraction. "Ground team, I'm moving to a better position," Maria radioed. "I can get a cleaner shot at the east building from the ridge." "Negative, Overwatch," came the immediate response. "Too dangerous to move. Maintain your position." Maria ignored the order. She had identified a position 200 yards closer that would give her clear shots at the enemy fighters who were preventing the helicopter from landing. The movement would expose her to enemy fire and go against direct orders, but American soldiers were dying in that courtyard. She grabbed her rifle and began moving through the darkness, using every piece of cover available. The sound of gunfire covered her movement as she worked her way down the hillside and across a dried riverbed toward the new position. Enemy muzzle flashes lit up the night like deadly fireflies, and she could hear bullets whistling overhead. The new position was perfect, a rocky outcropping that provided cover while offering clear lines of sight to the enemy positions. From here, she could see the entire battlefield and had clean shots at targets that had been hidden from her original position. Her first shot from the new position eliminated a sniper who had been targeting the assault team's medic. The second shot silenced a machine gun that was preventing soldiers from moving their wounded to cover. One by one, she systematically eliminated the enemy fighters who posed the greatest threat to the trapped Americans. The battlefield communications told the story of her impact. Enemy sniper down on Building 2. Machine gun position neutralized. East wall clear. With each shot, Maria was changing the tactical situation and giving the assault team the breathing room they needed. After 20 minutes of precise shooting, the compound fell quiet. Maria had eliminated 11 enemy fighters, including the three most dangerous positions that had been preventing helicopter evacuation. The landing zone was finally secure, and the wounded soldiers could be evacuated. As the helicopter lifted off with the casualties, the Special Forces team leader's voice came over the radio. "Overwatch, that was the finest shooting I've ever seen. You saved lives tonight." But Maria's night wasn't over. As she prepared to move back to her original position, her radio erupted with urgent transmissions. Another American unit, a convoy of supply trucks, had been ambushed just 3 miles away. The convoy was trapped in a narrow valley with enemy fighters on the high ground, and they were taking heavy casualties. Without waiting for orders, Maria began moving toward the new engagement. She reached the convoy's position as dawn was breaking, and the situation was desperate. 2 trucks were burning, several soldiers were wounded, and the surviving Americans were trapped behind their vehicles with enemy fighters controlling the surrounding hills. Maria found a position on an overlooking ridge and began engaging targets immediately. The range was extreme, over 800 yards, but her shots were finding their marks. She could see enemy fighters falling through her scope, and the intensity of fire directed at the convoy began to decrease. For the next 2 hours, Maria provided continuous sniper support while the convoy organized their defense and called for reinforcements. She moved positions 3 times to avoid counterattack and maintained accurate fire despite exhaustion and dehydration. When Apache helicopters finally arrived to provide close air support, she had eliminated 14 more enemy fighters and broken the ambush. The convoy commander personally radioed his thanks. "Unknown sniper, you kept us alive out here. We owe you our lives." When Maria finally returned to her forward operating base 36 hours after the mission began, she was physically and emotionally drained. She had been awake for 2 days straight, had moved over 10 miles on foot through enemy territory, and had eliminated 25 confirmed enemy combatants in 2 separate engagements. Her commanding officer was waiting for her return, and his expression was unreadable. Maria expected to be disciplined for ignoring orders and leaving her assigned position. Instead, he handed her a cup of coffee and sat down beside her. "I've been getting radio calls all morning," he said quietly. "Special Forces commanders, Marine officers, even a full colonel from the convoy you helped. They all want to know who the sniper was that saved their people." Maria said nothing, unsure where the conversation was headed. They want to put you in for a silver star, he continued. Problem is, officially, you weren't supposed to be in a direct combat role. Your actions last night are going to create some paperwork headaches for a lot of people. Maria looked at him directly. Sir, I did what I had to do to protect American soldiers. If that creates paperwork problems, I'm sorry. But I'm not sorry for doing it. Her commander smiled for the first time since she had known him. That's exactly what I told them you'd say. The bureaucratic complications were significant. Maria's actions had clearly saved American lives and demonstrated exceptional courage under fire. But acknowledging them officially would require admitting that women were already serving effectively in combat roles years before policy officially changed. The compromise was typical military bureaucracy. Maria received an official commendation that carefully avoided mentioning the specific details of her actions, while the full story was classified and buried in after-action reports that few people would ever see. But among the soldiers she had saved and the commanders who had witnessed her performance, Maria's reputation was secure. Word spread through the military community about the female sniper who could shoot like a machine and had the courage to disobey orders when lives were at stake. More importantly, attitudes were beginning to change. Commanders who had been skeptical about women in combat roles began to reconsider their positions. If a 120-pound woman from Texas could outshoot their best male snipers and demonstrate this level of courage under fire, perhaps the problem wasn't with women's capabilities, but with their own preconceptions. The missions continued, and Maria's skills were in constant demand. Every week brought new challenges and new opportunities to prove that gender was irrelevant when bullets were flying. She developed a reputation among enemy fighters as well. Taliban communications intercepted by American intelligence occasionally referenced the ghost sniper, who could kill from impossible distances and disappear without a trace. But perhaps the most significant change was in Maria herself. The young woman who had enlisted to prove a point had evolved into a seasoned warrior who no longer felt the need to prove anything to anyone. She had found her place in the military, and more importantly, she had found peace with who she was and what she could accomplish. The moment that would change everything happened on a dusty morning in March 2013, during what should have been a routine security operation. Maria's unit was providing overwatch for a supply convoy traveling through a region known for roadside bombs and ambushes. She had set up her position before dawn on a hill overlooking the main road, scanning for potential threats through her rifle scope. The convoy consisted of 12 vehicles carrying supplies to a remote outpost, escorted by a platoon of Marines. Intelligence reports suggested the route was relatively safe, but Maria had learned not to trust intelligence reports completely. She methodically examined every possible hiding spot, every potential sniper position, and every location where an improvised explosive device might be concealed. Everything changed when her radio crackled with an urgent transmission from a different unit entirely. A Navy SEAL team conducting a classified operation 15 miles away had been compromised. They were trapped in a valley with enemy fighters closing in from 3 directions, and they needed immediate assistance. The nearest air support was 40 minutes away, too long for the SEALs to hold their position. Maria's commanding officer received the request for any available sniper support and immediately looked in her direction. The distance was at the extreme edge of what was possible. She would have to abandon her current mission, move cross-country through potentially hostile territory, and arrive at a position where she could effectively engage targets before the SEAL team was overrun. "It's your call, Santos," her commander said. "Nobody would blame you if you said it was impossible." Maria was already packing her equipment. "Sir, I can make that shot if I can get to the right position in time." The movement to the SEAL team's location was a nightmare of rough terrain and enemy patrols. Maria traveled on foot, carrying her rifle and essential equipment, moving as quickly as possible while remaining undetected. She had to cross 2 valleys, climb a steep ridge, and navigate around several enemy positions, all while racing against time. She reached the overlooking position just as the enemy assault on the SEAL team was beginning. Through her scope, she could see 4 American operators pinned down in a rocky depression, with Taliban fighters advancing on their position from multiple directions. The range was 200 yards, an extremely difficult shot under perfect conditions and nearly impossible with the wind and heat distortion she was facing. The SEAL team leader's voice was calm but urgent over the radio. Any call sign, this is Neptune 7. We are in immediate need of sniper support. Enemy advancing on our position from north and east. We have wounded and cannot move. Maria settled into her firing position and began calculating the shot. At this distance, she had to account for bullet drop, wind speed, air density, and the Coriolis effect. She had made shots at this range before, but never under this kind of pressure and never with American lives hanging in the balance. Her first shot was a kill. An enemy fighter carrying an RPG launcher who had been moving to a position where he could destroy the SEAL team's cover. The sound of the shot echoed across the valley, and immediately she could see enemy fighters looking in her direction, trying to identify where the shot had come from. She had given away her position, but that was irrelevant now. The SEAL team needed time, and she was the only one who could provide it. Her second shot eliminated a machine gunner who had been pouring fire into the Americans' position. Her third shot dropped a Taliban commander who was coordinating the assault. For the next 20 minutes, Maria engaged targets at extreme range while enemy fighters tried to locate and neutralize her position. She was completely exposed on the ridgeline, but moving would waste precious time that the SEAL team didn't have. Bullets began landing near her position, and she could hear the distinctive crack of enemy sniper fire, but she maintained her focus on the targets below. The radio transmissions from the SEAL team told the story of her impact. Enemy sniper down. RPG threat eliminated. North assault team neutralized. With each shot, she was buying the Americans more time and reducing the pressure on their position. When Apache helicopters finally arrived to provide close air support, Maria had been shooting continuously for 38 minutes and had eliminated 19 confirmed enemy combatants at ranges between 800 and 1,400 yards. The SEAL team's position was secure, and all 4 operators were alive. As Maria prepared to leave her position, her radio crackled with an unexpected transmission. It was a voice she didn't recognize, speaking on the SEAL team's frequency. Unknown sniper, this is SEAL Commander Williams. I need to know who just saved my boys. Maria hesitated. Protocol dictated that she should identify herself through her chain of command, but something in the officer's voice made her respond directly. Staff Sergeant Santos, sir. 3rd Infantry Division. There was a long pause before the commander responded. Sergeant Santos, that was the finest long-range shooting I've witnessed in 20 years of military service. Where did you train? Army Sniper School, sir. Graduated 3 years ago. Another pause, longer this time. When the commander spoke again, his voice carried a tone of amazement that Maria had never heard from a senior officer. Sergeant, I've been a SEAL for 2 decades. I've worked with the best snipers in every branch of the military. What you just accomplished should not have been possible. You engaged targets at ranges that most snipers wouldn't attempt, under combat conditions that would challenge our most experienced operators, and you did it with precision that saved 4 American lives. Maria didn't know how to respond. Praise from fellow soldiers was one thing, but recognition from a SEAL commander was something entirely different. The commander continued, I'm putting you in for a Bronze Star with V device for valor. More importantly, I'm personally recommending you for advanced sniper training with our special operations teams. The military needs shooters like you, regardless of gender. The aftermath of that mission created ripples throughout the military community that Maria never could have anticipated. The SEAL commander, true to his word, submitted detailed reports about her performance that reached the highest levels of military leadership. For the first time, senior officers were forced to confront the reality that women were already performing in combat roles with exceptional skill and courage. But the most significant moment came 2 weeks later, during a change of command ceremony at Maria's forward operating base. The outgoing commander was being replaced by a full colonel who had served multiple tours in Iraq and Afghanistan. The ceremony was routine military pageantry until the new commander called Maria forward in front of the assembled troops. Staff Sergeant Santos, the colonel announced, your actions over the past deployment have brought great credit to this unit and to the United States Army. Your courage, skill, and dedication have saved American lives and demonstrated the highest standards of military excellence. As he spoke, Maria noticed another figure approaching from the side of the formation. To her amazement, it was Commander Williams, the SEAL officer whose team she had saved. He was in full dress uniform, and his chest displayed rows of ribbons that told the story of a distinguished career in special operations. The colonel continued his remarks. "It is my honor to present you with the Bronze Star Medal with V device for exceptional valor in combat operations." As he pinned the medal to Maria's uniform, the entire formation stood at attention in respectful silence. But then something unprecedented happened. Commander Williams stepped forward and, in front of several hundred soldiers, Marines, and other military personnel, came to attention and rendered a perfect military salute to Maria. The gesture was extraordinary for several reasons. As a SEAL commander, Williams outranked Maria by several grades. Military protocol did not require him to salute her. And his presence at an army ceremony was highly unusual. But his salute was not about protocol. It was about respect, recognition, and acknowledgement of exceptional performance under fire. "Sergeant Santos," Williams said loudly enough for everyone to hear, "on behalf of the men you saved and the special operations community, I salute your courage, your skill, and your dedication to your fellow warriors." The formation was completely silent. Every soldier present understood they were witnessing a moment that transcended normal military customs. This was a recognition of merit, pure and simple, from one warrior to another. As Commander Williams held his salute, something else remarkable happened. First one, then another, then dozens of soldiers in the formation began saluting as well. Within moments, the entire formation was saluting Maria. Enlisted soldiers, officers, Marines, Navy personnel, and even civilian contractors. The unprecedented display lasted for nearly a minute before Williams finally dropped his salute and the formation followed suit. Later that evening, as Maria sat in her quarters looking at the Bronze Star Medal, she reflected on the journey that had brought her to this moment. She had enlisted to prove that women belonged in combat roles. But somewhere along the way, the mission had changed. She no longer felt the need to prove anything to anyone. The young woman who had been told she was wasting everyone's time had become one of the most respected snipers in her division. The soldier who had faced skepticism and hostility had earned recognition from the elite special operations community. Most importantly, the girl from Texas who had learned to shoot with her father had found her place in the military family. Maria's story became part of military folklore, passed down through training programs and shared among soldiers who understood that excellence had no gender. Her actions during that deployment contributed to policy changes that officially opened combat roles to women. But more importantly, she had changed hearts and minds through her performance under fire. Years later, when people asked her about that day when a SEAL commander saluted her in front of hundreds of soldiers, Maria would smile and give the same answer her father had taught her years earlier. "The bullet doesn't care if you're a man or a woman. It only cares if you know how to use it." The salute was not just recognition of one soldier's exceptional performance. It was acknowledgement that the military was changing, evolving, and becoming stronger by embracing the contributions of all its warriors, regardless of gender. In that moment, on a dusty forward operating base in Afghanistan, the future of women in combat was secured not through policy changes or political pressure, but through the undeniable proof of exceptional courage and skill under fire.